I think it's not an accident that there are certain areas of health that are not really focused on in mainstream medicine. I think it has to do with money. I think it has to do with profit, business. Each of those symptoms make certain companies a lot of money. 20% of people had IBS or like digestive issues in like North America, which even that I think is very underreported. When you spray these chemicals on food, it changes the structure of the protein. The deeper aspects of gut health, I think it has to do with who you are and your connection with your community, and your bonds and your relationships and your relationship to yourself, most importantly. We have so many people and yet people feel so alone and they don't really know who they are. If you don't feel at ease with who you are, that really affects you, it really affects your ability to digest life, so to speak. We really need to have more respect for our microbiome.
Welcome to tonight's episode of the Health King's Court. I'm your host, Zach the Health King. Quick disclaimer to keep myself out of trouble. Anything that you hear in this podcast is not intended to be taken as medical advice. Thoughts and opinions you hear shared are just that, thoughts and opinions. And any action that you take based on what you hear is done at your own risk. And with that said, enjoy the show. Welcome everybody to today's episode of the Health King's Court, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Health. Today I am joined by a very cool guest. He is a holistic health coach that specializes in gut health. He dealt with digestive issues for years and doctors wouldn't or couldn't help him. So he took matters into his own hands, studying herbs, nutrition, and the root of gut health and the digestive system. He healed himself of IBS and digestive troubles. He then made a company, Healing is Holistic, to help people around the world do the same, heal their guts, clear up their skin, get their energy back, and lose weight in a healthy way. He believes that we need to bridge the gap between the ancient wisdom of natural healing and modern science, making him a very good fit for this podcast. And that is a Mr. Noaman Rahin. Noaman, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So let's jump right on into it. The gut. What's the deal with the gut? Why is it so important? Why is that your area of focus?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I always start with Hippocrates, which is considered the father of medicine in a way. He always said that all disease begins in the gut. And I think it would be more fair to say most disease begins in the gut. That would be my personal opinion. But yeah, I think the gut is the space where, if we think of our bodies as an input and output machine, we input energy through food, through water, through different sources, even through oxygen, and then we output, through waste. We're getting rid of the waste, and the gut is kind of the main source of that, the main place of that, where that takes place, and so that's where we absorb our nutrients, and those nutrients then go through our bloodstream, carried to all our organs, and so that's how we feed our body, and that's how we get rid of the waste. There's more than, we get rid of waste more than just through our gut, but that's kind of the main place that takes place. And so if we focus on, that's kind of like the foundation of our health in a way, in my opinion. And so that's why I think if we focus on that, a lot of other areas of our health will naturally improve, like, your skin health, things like maybe even kidney health, because the kidney is another detoxification pathway. And so when the gut is not able to get rid of, let's say you have constipation, not able to get rid of toxins through the gut or waste through the gut, that typically will put more stress on the other detoxification pathways, like the kidneys, through your urine. And we can talk more about, detox as well later. But yeah, I think it's the foundation of our health, and that's why I focus so much on that.
Yeah, it's huge because our bodies are biological machines, right? And you nailed it with the input and output. A machine of any sort has input that goes into it and an output, and as a result of the input. And I always like to relate things to cars because I like cars. If you have a car and you put even the best of fuels as the input, but the fuel system is faulty. Maybe there's leaks in the lines or the incorrect pressure, or there's just some sort of problem in that system of using the input. Well, then you're always going to get a faulty performance and all sorts of issues. And the body is the same. If you're putting faulty fuel in your car, well, then obviously you are probably going to ruin the system. If you're putting faulty input, faulty foods into our bodies, well, obviously you're probably going to damage the system that deals with that input as well. So we really can't do anything without a proper gut because we need good input and the good digestion of that input for our bodies to do any of the process, any of the using of those nutrients, any of the rebuilding or restoring or detoxifying, any of the above as a
Hmm.
result of food being used properly. That's huge.
Yeah.
And the gut has been very known in ancient cultures and different areas of health, even as a second brain.
Hmm.
It's been called so important that it's even a second brain, and it's not necessarily even a lesser brain. It's been known to be equally as important, at the least, to keeping good
Hmm.
health. But
Yeah.
it seems to be a forgotten in modern times or in modern societies. Why is that, you think?
That's a really good question. I just want to touch on how the gut actually has its own nervous system, and um, it's called the enteric nervous system. And so that just tells you a little bit about how important the gut actually is. If it has its own nervous system that can operate almost like autonomously, almost independently. And so, why do I think it's ignored? That's an excellent question. To be honest, I think it's not an accident that there are certain areas of health that are not really focused on, or not really, yeah, not really focused on in mainstream medicine. For example, nutrition, for example, gut health, and the connection between gut health and everything else. Another big example I would use is parasites. It's another big area where it's kind of like a big gap in the conventional medical field, where it's almost ignored. And to be fair, there is a lot of nuance in these things, so it's not so black and white. And it's very important to understand the nuance. That's actually one of the things I really wanted to emphasize in our podcast today, is because it's very important to understand nuance. Because in my opinion, the truth is lies in the middle of nuance. There's like always extremes, and people are like, "Oh, it's this, no, it's that," and I find it's the truth is more like it's this, but if you're in this situation, it's like that, and also this, and so it's more complex. And that's why I think it's very important to be educated on these topics, and to work with someone who is really an expert in that area. Um, but yeah, I hope that answers the question. I think it's not an accident. I think it has to do with money. I think it has to do with profit, business, and if we address things that are the root causes of many different symptoms, each of those symptoms make certain companies a lot of money, and so if we're kind of addressing the root, all those other things, financial benefits go away from these companies that are making a lot of money from those symptoms.
A patient cured is a patient lost, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, I'm certainly not a fan of the modern medical system and the way that it operates. And I've even talked about it on lots of our other episodes, and we could go into the origins of it and all the nastiness. But let's talk about the state of it. And let's talk about the state of the people. What do you think is the state of the average person's gut today? Is it doing
Cool.
all right? Is it awful? Is it somewhere in between? How are most people's guts out there?
Um, well, I just want to touch on one thing that I think is also very important to mention, and that is that as I've been in the field, of holistic health, I think I've been growing and learning. One thing that is very important that I want to mention is that every approach has its pros and cons. Even the conventional medical industry that we have, I do have to respect them for emergency care. I think that's where they really thrive, and that's where they really save lives. So I do want to give credit where credit is due. Um, Having said that, I think the real Um, the place where it kind of falls short is when it comes to ongoing chronic issues, especially something like gut health. Um, I'm sorry, what was the question? I'm sorry, what on?
No apologies needed, my friend. That's a very good point to raise because yes, it is the only intelligent stance to recognize where something does shine and where something is useful. And yes, if someone is to snap their femur bone, then perhaps go to a hospital and get some intervention there. If someone is in dire circumstances, then yeah, emergency care is valid and has its purposes, you know. And while standard medicine is, last time I checked, the number three leading cause of death in the country, and that's only
Hmm.
the ones that get reported as such.
Yep.
I'm sure they help people too. So, you know, we're not anti-doctor here. We're pro-truth,
Yeah.
whatever that is.
Hmm.
But my question was, what do you think is the state of the average person's gut?
Hmm. Um, well, I think the statistic the last time I checked, it was about 20% of people had IBS or like digestive issues in like North America. I think that was the stat. Um, which even that I think is very underreported. Um, I would say most people actually struggle with, or I guess the correct way to say it, most people don't have optimal digestion. In North America, at least, that's what I can speak on. Um, and I think that there's many reasons for that. One of the reasons being the way that food is handled here, and the chemicals that we spray on the food, like pesticides and herbicides, things like glyphosate being sprayed, that then actually changes the proteins in the food. Um, and then I remember, like just as an example, I was watching Dr. Datis Karazian, which I think he's an amazing doctor, by the way. He was talking about how when you spray these chemicals on food, it changes the structure of the protein. I think he was talking specifically about gluten and how it changes the structure of the gluten. And that's why, in the past, people never really had these, like it was very rare to have these issues with like gluten sensitivity, things like that, being really sensitive to bread. Whereas now it's like really growing a lot. And he said it's part, partially because of the chemicals that are changing the structure of the protein. So things like that, like the chemicals that we spray on our foods, the ingredients that we're using, and then also on a more deeper level, I think it also has to do with, I think this is what I was going to touch on as well in this podcast, is about the deeper aspects of gut health. I think it has to do with who you are and your connection with your community, and your bonds and your relationships, and your relationship to yourself, most importantly, because all those things are going to affect your nervous system. And yeah, and I think in North America, at least, I can say that it's ironic, especially in bigger cities, we have so many people, and yet people feel so alone, and they don't really know who they are. And I think that has a big impact on your gut health as well. So I think it's, multiple factors that go into it. Other things like, you know, fermented foods were a big thing. Um, Traditionally, we would, ferment foods in almost every culture in the world. And that's because we use fermentation as a way to preserve things. And it just so happened that fermented foods contain probiotics and were very good for our guts. So things like that, like traditions in the way that we handle food, also play a big role, I think.
Interesting. You raise an interesting point because I have seen, of course, the prevalence of claimed gluten intolerance in recent times. I've also seen counterclaims saying, hey, it's not the gluten, it's the glyphosate. But you've brought up a connection between the two that it is possibly the glyphosate altering the gluten. And I hadn't
Hmm.
heard that before. That's very interesting. Um,
Yeah, I recommend people check out Dr. Datis Karazian. Really an amazing person, like one of my role models, and an expert in the field of gut health and in toxicology, immunology. He published many papers on this as well. So if people want to check out more info about that, check out Dr. Datis, Datis Karazian. His last name is kind of hard to spell. It's like Kharzian. Karaz. Yeah, if you search that, his name will pop up. Sorry, I
Yeah,
don't
thanks
know
for
the full
spelling that
story.
out. I had no idea how to search that later. So I'll put that in the description to save people the
Sure.
trouble there. Super cool.
Okay.
Thank you for the recommendation.
Hmm.
You mentioned that there is a relationship that can go either way between gut health and relationships.
Hmm.
Can you expand on that? Is it a one-way street? Is that a two-way street? Can people's relationships affect their gut health, and then their gut health can affect their relationships? What's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a two-way street. Um, I mean, like I said, we have our nervous system, right? So if let's say you're stressed out in your relationships a lot, um, that's when you're stressed, your digestion doesn't work very well because your your body thinks it's not in a safe place. It's not safe. Everyone I think has heard about rest and digest. Um, when you're resting and digesting, you're calm. Your body, your nervous system is calm. Your body kind of does its job of digestion much better. When you're stressed out, your cortisol increases. You're not really feeling safe. Your body doesn't actually feel safe, and so when you're not safe, your body it prioritizes um, your safety over your digestion. Because the classic example is that if you're being chased by a tiger or something, it's not really important that you digest that meal. It's important that you get out of there to safety. And so that kind of wiring is still within us where if we're not feeling safe, if we're feeling stressed out, um, then yeah, you're not in a safe place to digest your food. And so you're always in this state of like anxiety or, being stressed out. So that's one aspect of it, how it affects your nervous system. But I think it goes even deeper than that too, because um, looking at, for example, like your identity and who you are and how you come and how you present yourself to the world, I think that has a very big impact as well. And I know it was a big part for me to kind of really get to know who I am and be more comfortable with myself around other people. And I think that has to do with first you have to sit with yourself and know yourself, who you are, and then you can sit comfortably with other people because you know who you are. And I think a lot of times we kind of most people I think we're born we don't really know who we are, and we kind of are shaped by our environment, and so we sit with many different people, and then there's this part of us that doesn't feel really at ease because you don't really know who you are and how people perceive you, and you don't know how to present yourself to the world. Um, and so this deep, like unresolved, very subtle energy of like who am I really? And that kind of I find really affects people with their gut because again, going back to that thing, if you don't feel at ease with who you are, that really affects you. It really affects your ability to digest life, so to speak.
Interesting. That's a good soundbite there. Um, So yeah, it's kind of like a hierarchy, right? The body has to take care of what the body has to take care of first and foremost. And so if the body recognizes, hey, I'm in a state of danger, I might die. Well, I don't have time to deal with this food. Food takes energy to digest. And so I suppose that's why a lot of people in or animals even in times of stress, they'll throw up. The body says, "Oh, I can't deal with this. Bam, get this out of here. We need to fight. We need to run. We need to do whatever." Um, and that's an extreme circumstance, but that could translate to all sorts of inability to digest properly if there's other things going on.
Hmm.
Then it's interesting because if we have, it just made me think of the other relation in that if we are trying to digest food, and the energy is going there because our body says, hey, I have this food. I need to extract the nutrients. I need to absorb the nutrients. I'm having trouble doing that and struggling. And if there's an unsettlement there, do resources get pulled from other places like the brain, like the ability to introspect and even think about those questions you were raising of who am I? What is my place in the world? What's going on? If you can't even get your food down right. So, and
Mm.
then you were saying it the inverse way of if you don't feel like you know yourself, then how can you digest properly? But I think it goes the other way as well. If it's like,
Hmm.
if my stomach hurts and it's killing me, I don't have time to think about what I'm doing the next 5 years, I'm just in
That's
pain and in the bathroom.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess I only focused on one side, so thank you for showing the other side as well. Um, the physical affects the emotional, mental, and vice versa, right? So if, like, I guess I gave the example, if you're stressed out or you don't really know, you're not at ease with who you are, you're not at ease, then you're gonna have trouble digesting the nutrients. And then the other way around, like you just mentioned, if you're not getting certain nutrients because you're struggling with digestion, your brain is not going to function optimally, your organs are not functioning optimally. And so if that's the case, then you might be deficient in certain things. Like magnesium, for example, is a big one. You might be deficient in magnesium, or you might be low in iron because you're not digesting your food properly. And so that can lead to you being nervous um, and not really coming with your fullness into life, because you're not fully fed. You're not, getting all the nutrients that your body physically needs. So absolutely, yeah, it goes both ways.
Yeah, it's like it ends up being a downward spiral, really, of the one affecting the other, and the other affects the
Mhm.
other, and it's just all down. And
Yeah.
so, why are we at the state that we're at with people's gut health? What do you think are some of the biggest offenders of the gut
Mm.
these days?
Um, well, I would say a big one is antibiotics and the excess use of them. Um, I made a video a while ago. It was just a short little reel about how antibiotics raises your risk of, like, there's like 50 things listed on it. um, but yeah, it raises the risk of pretty much all these kinds of different health conditions. And yet we kind of use antibiotics, like doctors kind of use it almost like it's nothing. Like, oh, let's just throw this at it and see if it fixes the problem.
Yeah.
And then we'll dig deeper. But there was a CDC statistic that showed that I think it was between 30 to 50% of the time antibiotics are used unnecessarily or inappropriately. And so if we just consider that one stat right there, that's profound. Like, that's huge, man, because antibiotics, they kill off not just the bacteria, the bad, quote unquote, bad bacteria that we're targeting to get rid of an infection, but they also kill off other good bacteria that we have. And recently in modern science, what we're exploring more is the importance of our bacteria, the importance of our microbiome. And it's extremely important. Like the bacteria in your gut, for example, they can actually create vitamins. They affect your mood, they affect your digestion, they affect your blood sugar levels, even, they affect so many things, um, that they affect your immune system, obviously, and so we really need to have more respect for our microbiome. And by just throwing antibiotics at things, that's, I think, a big kind of offending factor in our gut health. So that's a big one. And then the second one, like I mentioned earlier, is the chemicals that we're not only spraying on our foods, the herbicides, pesticides, that actually, as Dr. Datis mentioned, it actually denatures the proteins in them, which makes it more harmful. And then what else? Yeah, and then what we just mentioned earlier about the relationships, especially in North America and in first world countries, I find we really struggle with community. It's very individual based way of life, and that community really is important because we are social creatures.
Yeah. The chemical thing, I mean, that speaks for itself. People are just so inundated with chemicals from their food to their water to their cleaning products and just all angles. People are consuming chemicals in every aspect of their life when it really doesn't have to be that way at all. And people have just
Hmm.
been led that way for the profit of the chemical salespeople and the chemical companies. So that's a whole obvious conversation, right? But let's dig into the antibiotics because
Hmm.
It is such a big problem. It is such a big problem. I would think that the statistics in actuality are a lot greater than what you have named. And I know what you've named came from whatever official channel, but I would imagine they're far greater in how much they are inappropriately used. Because I think inherently, aside from extreme dire circumstances, they are one, unnecessary, but two, inherently harmful. What is it? An antibiotic. What is biotic? Living things, life. We are living things. We are life. And take things that are anti life forms. Does that
Mhm.
not boggle people's minds? Does it not? People don't understand the etymology of anything anymore, and that's a big problem. But these things are anti life. And we could talk about how germ theory and how people are so scared of bacteria, but meanwhile you have what, millions, billions, trillions of bacteria that you absolutely need in every single area of your body for your body to function.
Mhm.
Our bodies are just a bunch of bacteria.
Mhm.
It's so silly. And the problem with not recognizing that is when you take antibiotics orally via creams and whatever else, they don't discriminate. They don't discriminate. They kill the bad, allegedly bad or shouldn't be there bacteria, while also killing the bacteria that should be there. And those
Mhm.
bacteria that should be there perform vital functions. And
Mhm.
once they're gone, well, now that organ is not going to be performing that vital function that it needs to do. You get deeper than that, and you consider the war between certain bacteria, right? Because all life forms are always at war for territory, space, whatever. And let's say in your mouth or wherever else, your gut, there's a war between the supposed to be there bacteria, or good bacteria, we'll call it, and the bad bacteria, or the stuff that shouldn't be there or is more problematic. Well, if you just go wiping it all out, well, that bad bacteria might gain the higher ground on the good bacteria, and then it's just all a mess. It's all a
Mhm.
cluster of mess that you go, and it's just basically nuking a whole town
Mhm.
because there was a small problem in that one building somewhere.
Yeah, yes,
Uh,
that's a great analogy. I just want to touch on a few things and kind of uh, maybe talk about a little bit about nuance,
yeah, yeah,
because I think there's a lot of nuance in the field of antibiotics for sure. Um, and like I said, first of all, I always try and give credit where credit is due. There are, life-saving situations that, that where antibiotics have saved many people's lives. So I do want to be grateful for that. But I think what me and you are talking about is more for general non-emergency type situations, where I think it's used excessively, and like you mentioned, it's like a nuke where we're like nuking all this bacteria, including the good ones. Um, there are certain antibiotics that are more targeted for specific things, so that's also another like kind of nuance I wanted to bring up. Um, so, for example, there is rifaximin, which is an antibiotic that is commonly used now for something called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that particular one, it seems to work like decently well. It doesn't, it's not like this nuke kind of antibiotic. It's more like targeted. So it does seem to work decently well, and it is something to consider. But having said that, I think the whole concept, like you kind of touched on it, the whole concept of like germ theory or like um, kind of getting rid of this particular bacteria, it's I don't know. I think it's far more complex than that. That we have a complex we have a complex community of organisms inside of us, and they they interact with each other in complex ways that we don't really understand yet. And so we have many theories about it, but it's important to understand that these are theories and not facts. So when we even like germ theory in itself, I think we take it to be fact. And I think, there are certain situations, like there are certain microbes that we can see clearly causes illness, like certain parasites, for example. We see this parasite. If somebody has it, we can clearly see the symptoms and the illness, so we can attribute that to that parasite, to that microbe. However, like I said, there's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot that we don't understand in how certain bacterias communicate with each other, how they interact. And like just one example I can give off the top of my head is like there's a bacteria called H. pylori, which is very common, and it's said that it can cause many symptoms, and it could cause many symptoms. But see, this is where it becomes very nuanced and very complex and tricky to understand, because it's estimated, I believe, that up to 50% of the world has this bacteria, H. pylori. And so if almost half of the world has this bacteria, well, clearly not almost half of the world has, the symptoms that are attributed to it, mainly being like, digestive or stomach issues. Well, if half of the world doesn't really have that, then how can we say that this thing is problematic in itself? Clearly, it's more about the overall terrain or the overall environment of the person's body, because I can have H. pylori in my body, I can have this bacteria and not have the symptoms that are associated with it. And so it's not really the bacteria itself, it's my overall environment, how my body is able to overall, the overall community of my body, of all these organisms, and how they interact together. That's much more important.
Yeah, and something you just said sounded to me very reminiscent of the school of philosophy under the title German New Medicine. And I'm not a German New Medicine scholar by any means. I think it's interesting, and I've reviewed some of the materials, but basically it reminded me in the sense that you were saying, hey, that bacteria shows up when people are, having these issues, but that bacteria is also in a lot of other people who aren't having any issues. So is that bacteria the causation of these issues, or is it a correlation? Is it something produced by the body, or that comes into the body to help when there's certain things going on? I don't know. I don't know about that particular instance. I'm not a German New Medicine scholar. It's just an interesting school of thought to explore. Terrain theory is a more overall thing that German New Medicine does align with, I believe, and is something that I think makes more logical sense in relation to germ theory. But it's interesting to dive deep a little bit, not to be combative, but to pick your brain. You mentioned that particular antibiotic that is targeted to whichever specific bacteria, so it's not like a nuke that kills everything. And so it might be better or good or a good viable solution. But in your opinion, if that's implemented and that so-called bad bacteria is removed, what's the likelihood that that same bad bacteria is just going to come back because a root cause of whatever brought that there in the first place has not been addressed?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So I think this is actually, it kind of brings us to one of the points I wanted to really emphasize, which is always coming to the root cause and looking for that, because in my personal approach is whenever I see a problem, there's the immediate things you can do to help that person short term. And you can take, the conventional medicines for that, or you can take herbs and natural things to help the short term symptoms, but they're both kind of doing the same thing, only addressing the short term symptoms. And then after you've done that, or at the same time, I should say, that you're doing that, you also have to look at the root causes and then address that as well, which takes typically longer, and it takes more work, and it takes looking at your overall lifestyle, diet, all these other things. And so to bring it back to your question about this antibiotic in particular, so this is used for SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Personally, I prefer to use herbs, and there are specific herbs that have been shown to be more effective. Or, that's another thing about herbs that maybe we can touch on later, but you have to be very specific with them and understand their purposes for each one. But anyways, having said that, I prefer to use herbs. Sometimes for some people, they struggle for whatever reason when they use herbs, it doesn't work. So that is a viable option. When you get rid of the bacteria, that's just the short-term getting rid of the current symptoms that are caused by this bacteria. But then, like you said, then you have to ask yourself, well, what actually caused this overgrowth of this bacteria in the first place? Then you have to start digging that up and then look for the root cause there. So sometimes it's not a this or that. Um, it's not a, well, is it just the short term? Are we just looking at the short term solution, or are we looking at the root cause? I find if you truly want to heal, it's a this and that. Um, let's address this now, and then let's understand at the same time what caused this and work on that. So it's a this and that.
Yeah, of course. It's important not to be short-sighted. It's important to think long-term as well as, hey, I also need immediate results. But yeah, herbalism and herbology and herbs in general, plant medicine it's a serious field of study. It is a serious, complex, and itself a very nuanced field of study. And so it's really unfortunate how underestimated it is very often in seriousness because people will, to their own detriment, say things like, "Oh, I tried that, it didn't work," like you just mentioned. "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
this plant is supposed to be good for this. I tried it, it didn't work. Oh, I tried everything. Oh, I guess I have to take a pill." Well, what did you do? Did you take a capsule? Did you take a tincture? Was that tincture or capsule made from the root? Was it made from the seed? Was it made from the
Mm-hmm.
flower, the leaf? All of those things are going to have drastically different parameters of what they're able to do and how you should be working with them. People are so quick to discount something natural or holistic because they, got a capsule bottle off of the CVS shelf and it didn't
Mm-hmm.
give them life-changing results in a 3-day period. And then
Mm-hmm.
I tried the natural stuff. It didn't work. That's just such a pet peeve of mine when someone says, I tried it. Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Did you? Or are you lazy and you didn't actually try it? You just want to say you did to feel better. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Any thought?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts I want to share on that. The first one being, be very, very careful which supplements you use, and always look for like reliable companies. Because there was studies done where they looked at supplements, and a lot of them didn't even have the ingredients that they mentioned on the label. And some of them had ingredients that weren't even mentioned on the label. So you might have like an allergy to something, and it might be in there. So always be careful which companies. Try to find like a reliable company when you're buying supplements. So that's the first point. Um, which I guess to extend that thought, maybe you tried something and it didn't even have the herb that you thought it had in there because you just bought like a cheap bottle that wasn't from a reliable company. So that's another thing. And then a very important thing that you mentioned is like, is it the root? Which part of the plant is it? That's another thing we need to really pay attention to. And if I can give an example of that, neem is actually a tree that comes from India, and the leaves of this tree, neem leaves, has incredible properties that I've been studying recently, and I think very few people actually in the world even know about this. But um, the neem leaf, aside from being all the great things like anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, all these other things, a very unique property it has is that it was used as a birth control method actually. And so they would make the oil of the leaves, and you can use that. It's a natural spermicide. And so there was a study done where they took a pharmaceutical cream that's a spermicide, and then they used neem oil and tested it, like compared it side by side, and they showed that the pharmaceutical spermicide cream actually caused inflammation, whereas the neem oil, it did the same thing. They did the same thing. Both were effective as a spermicide, but the neem oil didn't cause any inflammation to the tissue. And so, however, that those effects only come from the leaves of the neem tree, not from the seeds, which is another common part of the herb that's used. So again, very important to specify what part of the plant is used for what purpose.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And it really brings me to the point that there's nothing new under the sun. Every drug and synthetic version of whatever is just that, a synthetic version and a cheap rip-off copy of something that we've already had. And in being a copy and being unoriginal and being synthetic and basically a rip-off, you're not necessarily going to get the effects that you get with what was originally there. And it might come with a horde of side effects as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about some of the biggest offenders in gut health. On the flip side of that, what are some of the biggest healers? What are some things that people can do to actually repair their gut health or maintain their gut in a state of health?
Hmm. That's a great question. I want to start by saying it's very individual. Everyone's needs are different. Everyone's situation is different. Your lifestyle, your diet is going to be different. And so, yeah, that I want to start off there. However, some things that I think for most people are very helpful, I would say is to start including fermented foods into your diet. That would be really, really great to have. And fermented foods would include things like, sauerkraut, you got kimchi, um, you got kefir, you got kombucha, even I think miso soup, if it's made properly, it has, probiotics in there. So things like that. Even yogurt technically has probiotics. Um, so yeah, just including fermented foods into your diet, I think is a great thing to do for your overall gut health. There are some people, there's a small amount of people that might even have symptoms when they eat fermented foods. And that, for example, people who have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, you might actually feel worse when you eat fermented foods or take probiotics. That's because you already have an overgrowth of bacteria and you're adding more. So if that happens, then that's actually a good indicator that you might have SIBO. So I would look more into SIBO if that happens to you. And SIBO is kind of like a relatively newer thing in the gut health community that hasn't really been come out to the mainstream. It's not as common in the mainstream as of yet. But yeah, fermented foods. I actually had some notes I just want to look over. Oh, another thing is to journal. I think that would be a very, very useful tool. Journal what foods you're eating, and then also keep track of how your bowels are doing. And so over time, you're going to be able to see some patterns like, oh, okay, so yesterday when I ate, last night I ate this thing and it had tomatoes, and then the next day, my bowel movement, it was maybe painful or I had constipation, whatever it was. So you kind of keep tracking. It's like, oh, this particular food I keep noticing comes up when I have these symptoms. And so, yeah, journaling, very, very useful tool, keep track of things and notice patterns. And kind of to extend that, very important to isolate things, isolate the effects of things. If I add in a new herb, for example, or a new supplement, very important that you only do one at a time so that you can understand, okay, I'm not going to change anything else in my lifestyle, in my diet. If you want, let's say somebody recommends a herb to you, keep everything else the same. Keep your lifestyle the same, keep your diet the same. Don't add any other supplements. Just add that one supplement in and then notice the effects so that you can isolate the effects coming from that particular supplement. Same thing with foods. A lot of people wonder about foods, food sensitivities can be an issue for a lot of people. It was an issue for me. I was actually sensitive to potatoes, which is so random. And, I used to eat potatoes a lot and I always had this weird, like bloating, gas, just uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. And I actually did a food sensitivity test with a naturopath and that showed that I was sensitive to potatoes. And I was like, no way. Like I've been eating potatoes, So I actually tested it and multiple times, I would eat potatoes and just feel terrible after, stopped eating them and don't feel it anymore. So, yeah, food sensitivities are a thing. Food sensitivity tests are typically not great, and they can be inaccurate. It just so happened that the one I took with my naturopath was accurate. The one I live in Toronto and I went to this one called Better Body. So if anyone is in Toronto, they want to check it out. That food sensitivity test for me was useful, but a lot of them are not. So maybe be careful with that. A better option would be to just do an elimination diet. So like cut out anything that you think might be a trigger food for you. Anything like, corn, soy, eggs, whatever you feel, gluten, anything with bread, or milk, whatever you feel is like an issue or might be an issue, you cut it out. And for a few days, you just have a very simple diet, very basic stuff that for sure you can eat. Like, maybe you just have your rice and chicken or whatever it is. And then you add in one thing at a time. So you just add in, let's say, if I wanted to test if I have a sensitivity to, I don't know, onion, I'll just add in onion for like 3 days back to back. Just onion. I'm not adding anything else. So let's say I have my rice, chicken, and now I'm adding onion for 3 days, and then notice any symptoms. If I don't notice anything, okay, so I can see that I don't really have anything to that, et cetera, right? Yeah, and then other things you can do would really depend on your situation. So I don't know if you want to dive into that now or maybe leave that for later, but those are more specific things that we can categories or issues within gut health that would need more like expansion.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if it makes sense to do it now, that's you could get into that. I'm not sure what that entails. Go for it.
Okay. 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 Well, I guess let me just back up a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, I think gut health is really individual. I mean, health overall is very individual. So the cause in your case is going to be different than other people's cases. So you really have to isolate what's the cause in your case. It could be something like hypothyroidism, right? If you have low thyroid hormones, that can cause constipation, for example, because you need thyroid hormones to keep your gut motility, to keep your gut moving. So that's one potential cause to look into. Parasites is another potential cause to look into. You know, things like medications, antibiotics is another potential cause you got to consider. Even things like, I don't know, antihistamines, people take it for allergies, so medications. What else? You got infections, you got candida overgrowth, you got so many different things that you have to look into. Bile flow is another one. And maybe I'll expand a little bit on that. So if you have, this is where the journaling really helps. So let's say you have problems digesting fatty foods, like greasy foods, like things that have a lot of oil, oily stuff like that. If you have trouble digesting fatty foods, it could be because your bile flow is not doing very well. So to help us understand this, right, I use the analogy of like washing your dishes. When you wash your dishes that are greasy, we don't just wash it with water, you wash it with dish soap because the dish soap has chemicals that actually breaks down the grease, it breaks down the fat that water can't necessarily get rid of easily, right? So our body also has this thing called bile, which is like this green liquid, and it's almost like the body's dish soap in a way, or detergent, whatever you want to call it. And so it breaks down the grease and the fatty foods in order to digest the nutrients, like your fat soluble vitamins, for example. So if you have trouble digesting fats, then it could be that your bile flow is not flowing properly. So we have our liver actually makes the bile and then stores it in this gallbladder, which is like a little green pouch right beside your liver. And then when you eat fatty foods, your body will send a signal, okay, we need to release more bile to digest that fat. And what happens is over time, that the bile that's in your gallbladder can start to become more thick. And so it can become almost like honey kind of consistency, which is called gallbladder sludge. And when that happens, then you struggle to digest fats. And so that's one potential issue to look into. Are you having trouble specifically with fats and greasy foods? Then you can use something to help you promote bile flow. So, for example, I would use bitter herbs. You got dandelion root, you got burdock, you got artichoke, you got, kind of blanking out on the other ones, but orange peel, they sometimes use that. So anything that's bitter can help you to improve the bile flow. And there's actually a supplement I would recommend is digestive bitters, which typically comes in like a liquid dropper bottle. So you can use your digestive bitters to help with your meals to help you digest the fats better, if that's something you're struggling with.
Interesting. And so what makes that bile fluid sludge up in the first place? Why would that happen?
Oh, that's a good question. Again, really individual, depends on what's going on in that person's body. Um, sometimes if you have an extreme diet where you completely cut out fat for a long period of time, then the bile doesn't flow because there's not getting the signal from the body that tells it, okay, we need to release bile. So it starts to just stick around and become more, thicker. So that could be one cause. Um, what else can cause it? Medications, I think side effects of certain medications. Not sure exactly which ones, but that could be a side effect of that. Um, what else? I think just in general, not moving, sedentary lifestyle, not moving could also impact it. So lots of different causes for that one as well.
Interesting. So you mentioned you had a food insensitivity to potatoes, and
Hmm.
people have insensitivity to this, to that, whatever. Where do you think these come from? Are people born with or just naturally destined to have certain things that they're not supposed to or shouldn't eat on an individual level? Is this something that's happening to people because of something? Why are people more and more frequently apparently having these insensitivities?
That's a great question. I think this one also is nuanced, uh, and it has a nuanced answer. For me in particular, it came from my dad because my dad also has a food sensitivity to potatoes, like we found out. And so I got it passed down from my dad. So I believe genetics had, definitely something to a role to play in that. Um, However, with something like, let's say, gluten sensitivity, which is becoming a lot more common, we talked about how the herbicides and pesticides like glyphosate that's being sprayed on it actually denatures the protein and makes it very hard to digest and starts to affect our immune system. So I think the chemicals also have a factor to play. Another factor I would say is something called leaky gut, which I really want to touch on as well. And leaky gut can actually cause more sensitivities to foods that you had no problem digesting before. So I actually see this with a lot of my clients where they start to report like, they're like, I've always eaten these foods, and all of a sudden now I can't eat, like onions anymore, or I can't eat whatever food anymore. Um, and it's because it could be because you have leaky gut, which is, um, so I'll explain it maybe with a visual so we can see. I have a little board here. So if we look at the inside of our intestine, right? Imagine you're looking straight through. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
Imagine that's your intestine, right? If we're looking at the inside of our intestine, there's like a little layer here, very thin layer. Um, so that this layer here, it's like, it's almost like a fence, right? Bring that closer. It's almost like a fence in this layer here that keeps, it only allows very tiny particles like nutrients to pass through, because on the other side is our bloodstream, right? So that's how when we eat, your all your digestive juices and everything breaks down the food into the tiniest particles, and then the nutrients, right? You have that kind of fence in your gut lining, and so the nutrients will pass through your gut lining, go into your bloodstream. Your bloodstream will carry the nutrients to all your organs. That's how we kind of operate. And when you have something called leaky gut, that gut lining that you have, it starts to kind of open up and create bigger gaps. When it has bigger gaps, now bigger things can pass through, bigger particles that are not supposed to pass through can pass through into your into your bloodstream. When that happens, your immune system kind of goes crazy because there's things that are not supposed to be there, that's entering your blood. So now your immune system starts really kind of creating havoc. Over time, when that repeatedly happens, um, your body can sense, oh, I had this food multiple times. It created problems that can create a sensitivity. We don't want that anymore, right? So that could be another thing to consider, is leaky gut.
Yeah, that's a huge one. And thank you for that demonstration. You're the second person to explain leaky gut very nicely. The other person used their hands, but the drawing is awesome too.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big problem. It's a big problem because things are supposed to be where they are supposed to be. When they go where they're not supposed to be, the body doesn't know what to do. The body freaks out. Our immune system freaks out. So certainly eating food, and if it's able to permeate out from the gut into the bloodstream, into all these other areas, then the immune system registers those things and says, "Ooh, I need to attack that. That's attacking me. That's a problem." It's that's certainly one arena where that could happen. Certainly makes you think what concoctions are being put into the body intravenously and directly into the bloodstream, and what kind of things do those contain, and what kind of things do people get insensitivities towards. Very interesting
Hmm.
thought to ponder there. But
Yeah.
so that's food insensitivities. Would you
Hmm.
lump lactose intolerance into the same category? Is that something else? What's the deal going on there?
Yeah, that was actually another point I wanted to touch on. So glad you brought that up. So dairy, um, I want to start by saying I kind of explored dairy over the years. I was kind of on all sides of the dairy controversial argument, you know? Um, One side being that dairy is terrible, is for baby cows. Why are we drinking milk type of thing? And then the other side being like, raw milk is actually incredibly healing. Dairy is actually very nutritious. And so I kind of explored all of this throughout the years, and I've been on all sides of it. Um, and now that I'm kind of, I always come back to it. Like, truth is very nuanced. That's what I've come to realize over the years. And I think with dairy, it's no different. It's very nuanced. I think one thing that I keep seeing consistently with my clients and with other people is when your gut health is not doing good, you're not able to tolerate dairy as much. When your gut health improves, your ability to tolerate dairy improves. I've seen that again and again and again. So again, very nuanced. Some people do have lactose intolerance and they just can't tolerate any amount of it. And, for them, probably best to just avoid it in general. However, for some people that, they're like, hey, I've always had dairy. I didn't have an issue. But then recently I started, developing the sensitivity, and I notice every time I have it. And it's typically, like I said, because your gut health is kind of deteriorating. And because your gut health is not doing good, you're not able to tolerate it as much. And as you improve it, your tolerance towards it should improve, and you should be able to have it no problem.
Yeah, that's very well put. And it brings into the conversation how we talk about health and we talk about health conditions, because too many conditions are described as identities and described as permanent things, described as, and especially when they're things that, oh, I've always had that, whatever. Well, other people haven't always had it. Sometimes they develop it. So that shows there is a spectrum that people can move on. Now, why
Mm-hmm.
can't you move the other way? Why would someone be able to develop something over time, but not be able to heal it over time? There's a two-way street in regards to our health. We're either
Mm-hmm.
advancing or we're regressing on a certain front. And that's why I think it's important to describe these things as temporary conditions or current conditions. They're not life sentences. Even when someone is born with it, and even for yourself, you mentioned your father had a potato insensitivity, blah, blah, blah. Well, that doesn't mean that you always have to have it. I think somewhere along the line, him or his father before him or whatever, something happened to them that their DNA has become damaged in a certain way and something's going on with their body. Now, of course, that's their DNA that they pass down to their child. So that child might be starting off at a lower state of health in that particular arena. And then they go throughout their life. And sure, they had a genetic disadvantage, but you can also, through epigenetics, through the choices that you make, alter that DNA at a cellular level and break that cycle and not pass that on to your child. I don't think anything or virtually anything is a life sentence. And I don't think anything is impossible to come back from necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of goes along with some of the language that you mentioned in your post, and we'll talk about that. But
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts there? Should we be talking about these things as life sentences? Should we be advocating for people, hey, you might have that now, but you don't always have to. Don't just accept that you have to take this pill
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of your life to manage it. What
Yeah,
do you?
that's very well said. I think even if we can take it in a deeper aspect, what we identify with becomes part of who you are, and you're accepting it as part of who you are.
Yeah.
You're giving it a home inside of you. And if I can just go off on a tangent just real quick and I'll come back. Um, there's a spiritual teacher by the name of Muji Baba that I went to go see in India, and I've been following for many years. And he talks about this a lot, this deeper aspect of what we identify as, um, what we identify with, and whatever you identify with, you give it a home. And I think that's really, really powerful what you just said. Like, if you identify with a certain health condition, and even our language, how we used to describe it, like people say, well, my IBS is flaring up, you know? Well, it's become yours. It's something it's mine now. And so I think it's very important to be careful how we view these things. And I think you said it very well, very beautifully, how you can't see, if you identify with it, it's something that you just have to live with. If I have this condition and this is what it is, you kind of have to live with it. Whereas if I look at it as this is something I'm currently experiencing, this is a symptom I'm currently experiencing, um, then my mindset about it even changes, because immediately there's a disidentification. It's not me. It's something I can observe that's happening at the moment to me. And that's a very big difference in there.
Yeah, and people are just taking it to such an extreme level, and they're being guided to do so by media, society, whatever, where people's ailments are their resumes. That's their identities that they introduce themselves with. Hi, I'm Jacqueline. I have IBS and I'm autistic and lactose intolerance. Nice to meet you. Like it's so glamorized, and when people don't have any sort of real achievement or real identity, and they haven't formed anything of themselves, and we could talk about why that's happening, they introduce themselves, or they really cling to some sort of identity, especially when so-called support communities are built all around them, and people really just dive so deep into it that they keep themselves there forever, and they want to be there because it gives them some sort of alleged specialness.
Yeah, yeah. We develop a comfort with things that we identify with. It becomes comfortable and familiar, and in a way, we don't want to lose it because it becomes part of our identity. We feel like we're actually losing something. Also, I think in a way we feel pity sometimes for ourselves, and when we, in an unhealthy way, sometimes we have an addiction to our own pity and to the things that we feel sorry for ourselves for, and that can be detrimental to trying to overcome it. But I do want to say again, back to the nuance thing. I think there is nuance to that too. Like, are there things that we actually are lifelong that you cannot cure? Maybe, there are things that I think are very difficult, or at least that I personally don't know how to cure it.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't close the door completely and say it's impossible, but I think there are things that I personally don't know how to overcome completely. And that would be something like, let's say like type 1 diabetes, that I personally don't know how to deal with that. And it requires medication, maybe somebody else in the world does, that they can work with on that. But I do think that there is, again, I don't want to be too black and white. I think there is a possibility that there are some things that the physical body has some sort of illness that it has to live with. I think that is a possibility. I don't want to completely put that out. And, for some people who are dealing with something that's, let's just say, very difficult to cure with our current understanding, maybe it's not fair for them to kind of speak in this way, because for them, they're like, but I'm trying everything. I went to everyone and I'm doing everything I possibly can, and I still have to live with this. So yeah, just wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a spectrum of difficulty, and there are always exceptions, and there's always things that are, might not be possible within a particular lifetime or within the circumstances that someone finds themselves in. I would just encourage anyone facing anything, whether it's diabetes, and I'm not going to name any of the buzzwords that are going to flag this
Yeah.
video already, more than
Yeah.
it's already going to get flagged. But I have read very interesting things on very interesting people alleging to have reversed or healed, I wouldn't say the C word, um, all sorts of interesting ailments that are claimed and alleged to be life sentences. The
Hmm.
information's out there. The information has it's been made difficult to find beyond a
Hmm.
simple Google search sometimes. But for someone that is determined and perspicacious enough to navigate the world of internet censorship and misinformation and alleged misinformation to
Hmm.
find some real information, it is out there. It is certainly out there, you know? And so I'll still say it's a pet peeve of mine if someone says they tried everything. There's so many things. Nobody's tried
Hmm.
everything. If you did try everything, you'd at least be in a better position than you started off with somehow, enough that you wouldn't be complaining anymore. There's
Hmm.
something out there for you, you know, and that's why I always try to get back to that empowering stance because that's what I'm trying to do, empower people to never just sit down and accept suffering.
Hmm.
May you
Yeah.
get to 100% better? No. Can you alleviate your whatever you got going on to some degree? Yes, it's something out there, you know, and that's why I'm aggressive with my speech because that's my stance to
Hmm.
find that. Nobody's
Yeah.
necessarily find it for you. Maybe you are going to all these places. Maybe you're going to the wrong places. Maybe you're on
Hmm.
the wrong websites, in the wrong circles, on the wrong groups. You know, I'm not saying it's easy. I think the contrary. The very first thing I said in this conversation is it's difficult to, it's a serious industry or area of study, health. But
Hmm.
how serious is your health to you?
Hmm.
And
And
nobody knows.
and I just wanna say that one of the most important uh one of the most important things that's needed for healing is to know who to go to for what,
Yeah.
because I mean, naturally, because people don't really, unless you're kind of aware of this industry and what people's expertise is, people just go to their family doctor for whatever issue they have, right? And
Yep.
so, let's say you have gut issues, go to your doctor. If maybe if you really push them and you really have an ongoing thing, they might get you an appointment with a specialist or the GI doctor. You wait like 4 months to see them, and then they do like a colonoscopy, and then they tell you, oh, well, there's nothing, everything's fine. Just eat more fiber, drink some water, and you're good. So it's like it's very important to know who to go to for what issue. I've noticed that that's one of the biggest factors that determines whether somebody's going to heal or not is whether they're able to find the right person to work with. For example, like if you have, I had sciatic nerve pain um, for a while, and a couple months I had it. And I'm just like, what's going on? I feel this pain down my leg, and and then I went to a chiropractor, and because I knew like this is related to my spine. Went to the chiropractor. He explained it very well, and he said, there's pinched nerves in your spine. That's nerve goes down your leg, and this is what's actually causing it. He gave me like two adjustments, and literally after two adjustments, this nerve pain that I had for like 5 months just went away.
Yep.
Um, and whereas if I went to the doctor and they give me pain medication and this and that, and I'm like going around trying to figure out what's the solution. Sometimes the most important part of the solution is knowing who to go to um, for the particular issue you have. So try to find someone who has already healed that particular issue that you have. If they can show you that they've already healed this, and even better if they've done it for themselves. They have firsthand experience with dealing with your particular issue. Go to them.
Yeah, and that goes back to how much effort are you willing to put in for your own health? It takes more effort to research, find, and vet some practitioners or healers or doctors. It takes more effort to potentially travel. You might have to go outside your town or maybe even a couple hours to find a really good person.
Hmm.
What is it worth to you? Now, obviously, the nuance, not everyone has the means to travel, not everyone has the time, the resources. Someone might not necessarily be able to afford a sort of anything that's outside of insurance that we could cover. So I understand the nuance, but again, what are you worth to you is what I'll ask. And if you are worth it to you, find a way.
Hmm.
Find a way,
Very
whatever
well
it may
said.
be. But yeah, what you've mentioned is something that's very much an area of interest to myself. I work with a clinical shiatsu specialist 2 times a week, and he does things like a chiropractor would do, plus stuff that's beyond the realm of general chiropractics. It's a very interesting area of study.
Mhm.
And so I recommend anyone go to someone like that because our bodies, even someone's body on an everyday basis, whether you sit at a desk or you work with your body or anything in between, you play sports, work out, don't, our bodies take a beating. Our
Mhm.
bodies take a beating, and sometimes they need to be put back into place. Whether it's your veins, your lymph nodes, your nerves, all sorts of things could happen. Get your lymphatic fluid flowing the way it should be. So
Mhm.
someone like a good chiropractor, because I think there's a lot of unfortunate practitioners of chiropractics as well. But good ones, especially ones that have other outside areas of study and influence as well, they can be very good. Clinical shiatsu might be more niche, but if you could find a good one, that's my strong recommendation. And there's lots of other healing arts out there, Bowen therapy, Rolfing, I've heard of, all different things that have some similarities and some differences to healing in a bodily manipulation way. But that's a bit of an aside.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think, if any, are some of the alleged remedies for gut health out there that might be farcical? Or it might be like, hey, this is good for your gut, and actually it's not. Or, oh, this is a
Mhm.
simple thing, and actually it's not. On the holistic side of things or otherwise.
Yeah, so I mean, I could literally say anything, like even probiotics, right? Some people will say, "Oh, everyone knows probiotics. Take it for your gut health." It's again very nuanced, right? So, what probiotics are you taking? You know, what bacteria is in your probiotics, and what bacteria is in your gut? Do you know that you need that particular species of bacteria? It's hard to say, right? It's hard to say because unless you do an actual stool test and look at what amounts of which bacteria you have and which one would be beneficial for you, it's really hard to know. So a lot of times it is trial and error. Um, but I think the key, I mean, you can try it out. You know, you can try out different probiotics and see if it actually, if you do notice that it helps you, then obviously you can explore that further. But what I always try to say is the first step to solving a problem is to know what caused it. You know, if you're trying to solve a problem with your gut and you don't really know what's causing it, you're just kind of shooting in the dark. You're just throwing random supplements at it that you hear from people and hoping that it solves the problem. It's like shooting a dart in the dark. You know, you can't really see where you're throwing it. I'm just hoping it's going to land. Um, you really got to be more strategic about it and really uh, try to really inform yourself. You know, and understand, well, what are the causes of, let's say you have constipation, what are the causes of that? What are the causes of diarrhea? What are causes of bloating and gas? Now, the problem is that there's a lot of causes. So that's where I think what you were saying comes in. It's like you actually have to put in a lot of work to understand that, or go to someone who's already put in that work for many years, has already healed people who has these issues already, and go to them and work with them, you know? But whatever way that you can, try to actually get the knowledge either through yourself or someone else of what the causes actually are in the first place and start there. Don't start at the solutions. You know, I think that's the big problem that people make is like, whether it's probiotics, you know, whether it's this herb or that herb, I heard this is good for gut health. It's like there's no one thing that's good for gut health because there's no one gut issue. Everyone's issue is different. So try to start with the cause, figure out what could be causing it in my case. Okay, well, if you have, let's say, bloating and gas, okay, well, what are the things that cause bloating and gas? One of them is SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So then you research SIBO and see, okay, what are the symptoms of SIBO? And then do I have these other symptoms that it comes with? You know, do I have, when I take probiotics or eat fermented foods, do I feel worse? That could be a sign that you have SIBO. So then you kind of narrow it down from there. Okay, so now SIBO is a potential cause. Let's say you don't have an issue with probiotics, you take it, you actually feel better. So now you look at other causes. Parasites, another one. Which, by the way, I do want to really kind of go in depth in parasites. Um, if we get a chance to do that. So parasites could be another cause. So you look more into that, and then you got candida overgrowth. That you look more into that. So really about start with the root causes and then narrow it down from there. Once you have the understanding of what could be the root cause, then take your solutions from there.
Yeah, and I think the dart analogy is a really good one, darts in the dark, because you throw a dart at a dartboard in the dark, and best case scenario, bullseye. Alternative, you hit the board somewhere else. Worst case scenario, you hit another person
Or
and
yourself.
or yourself, or do some property damage, and that's really a good analogy for healing, or trying to add remedies to the body in any regard, whether they're serious, intensive, or they seem like light, because maybe you'll fix your problem, maybe it'll get a little better, maybe you'll do a little damage, or maybe you do a lot of damage. Medical intervention or health interventions, they're serious. You can't
Mhm.
just throw stuff at the wall and expect it to be good or net zero or neutral. You can mess yourself up, like you said. Too much, yogurt for probiotics. Well, too much probiotics is no good. You'll do more damage and be in a worse spot than ever. And that can be extrapolated to really any intervention. You want to make sure you're doing it responsibly. I have approximately 15 minutes. I could keep going. My next question was going to be on parasites. So, yeah,
Yeah.
what's going on with parasites? I'm aware of them, but most
Mhm.
people are not. And a lot of people even think it's like either fake, or they never think of it. They think parasites only happen in animals, or parasites only happen in third world countries where you drink the water in Mexico.
Mhm.
What's the deal with what's the scoop with parasites?
Yeah, so this is, I feel like a place that I really specialize in because I've dealt with it myself and I've helped hundreds of people around the world get rid of parasites. I've studied, I've looked into the studies about herbs that are, this herb is proven to be effective against that parasite. And so I really do have a lot of experience in this field. When it comes to parasites, I guess if I can dispel some of the myths, one myth is that, like you said, oh, we only have parasites in third world countries. We don't have it here. We're too clean for that. We're too good for that. That's completely false. There's so many ways that you can get parasites and they're part of the environment, like they're part of nature. It's not like some alien creature that only exists in certain places. It's part of the environment. Um, Now, the next kind of myth I want to dispel is that everyone should do a parasite cleanse and everyone has parasites that are harmful. And that one is a controversial one and that's something that I actually would disagree with from a few years ago with my own understanding. A few years ago, I would have told everyone to do a parasite cleanse. Now I've changed with with more experience and more knowledge that I've seen. Um, I don't think everyone should do a parasite cleanse, and I think it should be something that should be done very selectively and very strategically, and it should be prepared for. And certain people simply should not do it at all because it can actually make you more sick. Because what happens is when you go after parasites, when you go and start taking herbs that kills them off, they actually release toxins in that process of them dying off. And as that happens, it puts more pressure on your body, it puts more pressure on your liver to filter those toxins. It puts more pressure on your body overall. And so you don't want to do that if you're already struggling. If you're in a state where you're already struggling, let's say you're constipated, now you have all these dead parasites and toxins building up that is not being excreted, and now you can become even more sick. That's why sometimes people do a cleanse like that without really knowing what they're getting themselves into. And they become more sick and then they leave it and they go, oh, this is a bunch of BS. It's like, well, you didn't know, you weren't informed and you just jumped into something that you didn't know about. And there is a lot to know about when it comes to parasites. There's even some parasites that are supposedly good for you, that affect certain parts of your immune system, that can help with things like allergies, for example. There's small studies on that if you want to go search that up. So it's very complex, and um, I don't think everyone should do a parasite cleanse. I think you should again look at the symptoms that you have, like with every other issue. Try to narrow down what the potential root causes are, and if you suspect that parasites could be an issue in your case, um, then be very careful how you start it and when you start it. First of all, make sure that you're not constipated. Make sure that you're using the bathroom every single day before you start, to make sure you're flushing things out. You can use binders like activated charcoal or bentonite clay. Binders are basically things that bind to the toxin. Think of it almost like a magnet. It'll bind to the toxins and help clear them out of your gut more efficiently, so that these toxins are not sticking around. When they stick around in your gut, let's say you have leaky gut, these toxins can actually re-enter your bloodstream, right? So again, lots of things to know about. I actually made an ebook to teach people how to do a parasite cleanse. So if they want to check that out, maybe check my Instagram, Healing is Holistic, or check my YouTube channel. But yeah, there's a lot to know when it comes to parasites.
Yeah, detoxifying in general is, again, serious business. It's a serious thing to do. Our body has a wonderful way about it of tucking away toxins that it's not able to immediately expel. When things are tucked away, that local area might be dealing with them, but overall the systems can keep going. Well, when we do something such as a parasite cleanse or other sort of detoxifying modalities, well, those things that were kind of happily tucked away, suddenly they're circulating. And if there's a lot of them or a lot of it or whatever it is, well, that is a heavy, heavy load on the body. So it is very essential to make sure that the body can handle that and that the body's elimination pathways are equipped and ready to take care of them. Because if you stir everything up, shake everything up, and don't allow the everything to get out, well, it's just going to find somewhere else to settle, and it's not going to be pretty. And so, yeah, a lot of people do experience Hertzheimer reactions, I believe they're called, or
Yeah.
detoxifying symptoms, headaches, nausea, indigestion sometimes, all, and even, it can be more intense and extreme. And then they say, "Ooh, well, this herb did that to me." No, it's chasing out the bad stuff that was in you, and that's what's causing that. And so it's an important thing. But that's a very interesting thing that you brought up in regards to parasite or some parasites being possibly beneficial. Now, would they have technically another name at that point? Because definitionally, parasite is an organism that is feeding off of a host to the host's detriment and to the parasite's benefit. So is there another name for those organisms that are existing, that would be more accurate?
See, this is where it really comes down to a gray area of our understanding. Like I mentioned, we really have a lot of learning to do when it comes to understanding how our body interacts with all these organisms that are in our microbiome, that are in our environment, and how exactly they interact with each other. Is very difficult, and one of the reasons why it's so difficult to understand is because it's not so black and white. Like this particular bacteria or quote unquote parasite, the definition of a parasite, like you said, it's feeding on something else to the detriment of the host. But what if that particular thing, for example, reduces allergic reactions, and we can see that and demonstrate that, it only goes to show that there's a lot of nuance, and so you really have to look at it case by case and look at yourself and say, okay, do I have the symptoms of a parasite? Okay, yeah, maybe I have this bloating and gas, I have constipation, this and that. Maybe you take some herbs, like if you prepare properly, you take some herbs, and then you see actual worms come out, in your stool, which is disgusting. But as you see that, then your symptoms improve. So now I can see the proof that, okay, I can say for myself that parasites were a big cause of my issues because I see the proof of it. I've studied what I knew about parasites and how to do it properly. I got rid of them, and I see the improvement of my symptoms. So I can clearly see the linear sort of results of that. However, it's not always that's the case, So it's really, again, very nuanced and very difficult to know these things in full detail.
Yeah, there's a lot of root causes, a lot of modalities to be explored, a lot of things to consider while the process is occurring. But let's talk about you and how you help people through those kind of things. So yourself, you're a holistic health coach specializing in gut health. What does that mean and what does that look like? How does someone, when you're working with someone, what does that look like? Are you doing in-person meetings, Zoom meetings? Are you giving them actionables? Are you just teaching them lessons and they go on? What does your process of being a coach look like?
Yeah, so I do online consultations, mainly through Zoom, and I work with people from all around the world. Um, I just want to give a quick legal disclaimer. I'm not a doctor, so I don't provide medical advice. I don't diagnose or treat or anything like that. I just provide information for informational purposes, and what people do with that information is up to them. But the way my consultations work, so I actually offer a 3-month gut healing program. And in that program, I'll start off by looking into your health history. So again, my approach is to really understand. I think that the key aspect of healing is understanding first. And so I always try to understand the person. And I always say that your health is actually an accumulation of everything that you've done in your life. So we go back and look at, okay, when you were a kid, did you have a lot of ear infections, throat infections, you take a lot of antibiotics for that. Even something like, were you born, when your mother was giving birth to you, was it a vaginal birth or was it a C-section? Because as you come through the womb, you actually get the microbiome of your mother. And if you didn't get that, you got C-section, then your immune system will actually be affected. So things like that, like looking at your health history, what medications you've taken, things like that, and try to narrow down the potential causes. And I work with people's doctors as well to help them do that. So, for example, if they need a blood test to see specific results of maybe their iron levels, or maybe test their thyroid and see how their thyroid is doing. I'll tell them, hey, you can go to your doctor and ask for these things on a blood test. So then they'll go get it checked out. It's a step-by-step process, and then as we narrow down the potential cause, then we work on those things holistically. So I help people with their nutrition. I am a certified health coach. I went to Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And so I really, focus on nutrition. I focus on giving people a simple exercise plan that they can follow, a routine that they can develop, and optimizing their sleep. So, and just overall lifestyle. In the 3-month program, I work with people as starting with like more physical things. We work on the herbs and, food. And then slowly over the program, we'll get more into the deeper aspects of things that we were talking about earlier, like relationship, identity to yourself, who you are. But yeah, I work with people online, and I do offer one-time consultations for someone who's new, just wants to get to know me, whether they want to continue working with me or not. And it's all through Zoom.
That's amazing. So it's very comprehensive. It's kind of like a one-stop shop for a lot of things that someone might have going on in life. And so if someone would like to explore that and is interested in working with you or wants to see more information about you to decide if they want to work with you, where can they go for that? Should they email you? Should they call you? Should they go to your socials? Where can they go for that?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Healing is Holistic. Or you can send me an email, healingisholistic@gmail.com. So either way, you can reach out to me and I'll get back to you. Just let me know what your issues you're currently dealing with. I also just want to mention that I focus on gut health, but because gut health is the root of so many other things, like, for example, like eczema and skin issues, I've helped people with eczema as well. So I can also help you out with that.
That's awesome. And so my last question for you, Noman, is what is the message you would like to leave our listeners and viewers off with today? You've already said a lot of very interesting things, a lot of very actionable things, a lot of very interesting information. But if there's one message you'd really like for people to walk away with, what would that be?
Mm. My one message would be that healing is holistic, like the name of my company states, healing is holistic. So if you want to heal, you have to look at your health as a whole and not as, isolated areas. So that means you have to look at the whole, everything that affects your health, including your diet, your sleep, your exercise routine, your relationships to other people, and to yourself, more importantly to yourself. That's where it starts. And so I would always say, look at your health as a whole and don't try to throw in one supplement or one herb to try to fix a problem that is affecting the whole. it doesn't really make sense because it didn't. And another thing is, it didn't happen overnight that you got this particular health condition. Most of the time, it didn't just happen overnight. It happened over many years. And so don't expect a miraculous overnight cure because it didn't happen overnight. So it's not going to get fixed overnight either. You got to work on many things. And then my last message again, which I already stated, but always look to understand first before you look for solutions. Don't throw random things and hope that it will fix your problem. Look for understanding first. Look for the root causes, and then based on those root causes, then take action. And if you don't have the time or the resources to do that on your own, work with someone who does.
It's a great message and great words to live by. Noaman, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And just like that, episode 12 of the Health King's Court has come to a close. This was a very important episode and one that I hope people share with their friends and family because gut health is so important and yet so understudied and under-considered by the everyday person. And it's quite possible that healing the gut is the key to a variety of things that might be ailing someone. So I really do hope you enjoyed, and as a special treat, Noaman has sent me an additional voice clip that I'm going to play after this because he wanted to expand on the topic of parasites a bit more. So be sure you subscribe to the channel, be sure you like this episode, tell your friends, ZachTheHealthKing.com, and I hope you enjoy this quick clip from Noaman about parasites.
To explain the point a little further, there's been some research done that has shown that some intestinal worms can actually have a potential positive effect, such as reducing allergy symptoms, for example. So that's because parasites can affect your immune responses, such as your Th1 and Th2 response, which are both connected to inflammation. And there's even been some research from Venezuela that showed that when they got rid of worms, the patients actually the sensitivity to allergies got worse after getting rid of the worms. And in that particular case, I think it was skin allergies. But anyways, the point is that there is a lot of nuance to the topic of parasites, just like every other topic in health. And it's important to really understand and really inform yourself about a topic before you jump into it, before you jump into taking action. And for example, if you're considering parasites because you think you have, certain symptoms like bloating and gas, and you think it's caused by parasites, well, you have to look at all the other things that potentially can cause bloating and gas. There's many, many different things. So you can't just automatically assume one thing because you read one thing. You have to inform yourself of all the other potential causes, narrow it down, and say, okay, well, based on the fact that I have all these other symptoms that line up with parasites, and don't line up with all these other things, the other potential causes, now I think I have parasites, and then really inform yourself of the process of getting rid of them. Now my ebook helps you to do that, to actually teaches you and guides you throughout the whole process. Or you can work with someone one-on-one to kind of guide you through the process. I do work with people one-on-one, but if you can find someone who can work with you, a functional medicine doctor, for example, I think is great. But anyways, if you can find someone who can teach you how to do it properly, that would be great because there are important things to know, such as make sure you're not constipated while you're doing a parasite cleanse, because you could potentially get even more sick. So really the point being here that it's best to inform yourself as much as you can. It is a nuanced topic. You have to look at all your symptoms, look at the individual, rule out other potential causes, inform yourself of how to do the cleanse, and then follow up a protocol to do it properly. Hope that helps.